Today is Friday, July the 19th, 2024, and I want to prepare a message for people who are focused on Project 2025, but I am going to be speaking specifically to the Ingleside community because I think people still want to avoid dealing with the issues going on in their own homes, in their own communities, in ways that they then miss important things that are happening right now in order to focus on things that haven't even occurred and have no real utility legally or legislatively, even at this point. It's just proposals. What I'm going to show you today is actual legislation that was approved as of yesterday, July the 18th, 2024. And I'm wondering if people know what it says or what it means for them. This is a message that was posted to Angelia Williams Graves' political Facebook page where she is sharing how she voted on Virginia Senate Bill 6012, which is what we're going to focus on, especially because it was introduced by Senator Louise Lucas, who is the delegate for Portsmouth. The important thing is to understand what VMSDEP is, and also understanding that all this legislation is related to money, the allocation of money for a variety of things, in this particular case, military survivors and educational benefits. This was taken directly from the Virginia Military Survivors and Dependents Education Program website, which defines a military survivor as veterans who have been rated by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs as totally and permanently disabled, or at least 90% permanently disabled as a result of military service, or qualifying military service members, and then it gives a listing of who those people are. What's important to note is, what do people who have been permanently or totally disabled need in order to feel safe, healthy, and happy? And then also take note that all military combat is not covered. So there are some kinds of military combat that are not even recognized by the Virginia Military Survivors and Dependents Program. The other is that to be considered, your eligibility has to be certified by someone who will attest to the fact that you qualify under the type of combat and the type of disability they require. If they qualify, they then receive what? Money for themselves or their dependents to receive education, to then do what? Earn more money. How? By working for either the government or a private commercial business, probably related to the military or Department of Defense. The Legislative Information System, or LIS system, or also the Law LIS system, is publicly available. You can even create an account to receive alerts and notifications on any type of legislation you would like to track. Again, here we are looking at Virginia Senate Bill 6012, which it says appropriates the public revenues for 2 years, ending respectively on June 30, 2025 and June 30, 2026, by adding some of the information that is included in the legislation. Here we also see the amount allocated and the budget funding sources from which the funds are to be drawn and distributed. This is another post from Angelia on yesterday, July the 18th, 2024, where she mentions Booker T as her alma mater and shares a post from the representative for Ingleside on the Norfolk School Board discussing some renovations currently being done to Booker T. Washington, which is my alma mater. Angelia and I are about the same age, but she is not from my graduating class. I don't have access to my yearbook right now, or I would look at it to see if her photograph is in there. I had returned from Fort Bragg and was living with my grandmother my senior year, which is how I came to graduate from high school in Norfolk. But when I asked Jermaine if he remembered her from Ingleside because he grew up here, he said that he did not, and she would have to have been attending at the same time he and I were attending Booker T. Jermaine and I did attend Booker T at the same time, but I'd never met him. We met afterwards, so it is completely plausible that I simply had not seen her. The significance of this post about a local high school will be evident to you in a moment. As you can see, an aspect of the Virginia Military Survivors and Dependent Program for Education has a specific recruitment component for high school students. They clearly indicate here in the legislation that this will be an effort to address the critical pilot shortage for the Virginia Space Grant Consortium. And it also mentions how the funds will be used to offer financial assistance to high school students who then choose to take part in the kind of programming they need. It may be difficult to see here, but you can access this information at spacegrant.org. But the Virginia Space Grant Consortium, VESSS Summer Academy, is a pre-college program that's said to engage students in real-world investigations of the Earth and its highly dynamic systems through the use of the latest NASA and NOAA research data. It is for high-performing students who will attend a one-week residential summer academy at NASA Langley. This article was written in December of 2022 and also may be difficult to read, but can be found at spaceforce.mil and says essentially, Artemis 1 launched into space on November 16th aboard NASA's Space Launch System and re-entered the Earth's atmosphere on December 11 following a 26-day, 1.4 million mile mission. It says the data is critical to satellite operators all over the world in achieving mission success as the space domain becomes more contested and congested, said Colonel Mark A. Brock, Space Delta II commander. Timely and accurate ex-geospace object detection and tracking in conjunction with our traditional SDA operations closer to Earth will be essential to our support for human space flight safety from launch to lunar landing and return, to facilitate human exploration and to promote the peaceful and reasonable use of space. It concludes by saying, with a successful Artemis 1 mission, NASA will continue to work toward follow-on missions with the goal of putting humans on the moon again for the first time since NASA's Apollo 17 mission in 1972. Just as the U.S. Navy's USS, whatever the name of the ship is, recovered the Apollo 17 astronauts, the Department of Defense will continue to play a vital role in humanity's exploration of space. USS Spacecom is proud to partner with NASA on activities that advance our respective military and civil space missions and support the nation's space endeavors. Now, going back to our legislation 6012, I'm showing you this section because the part I'll show you next is included, but I wanted you to have access to the parts of the original legislation that was not approved and therefore is stricken through. Given the timing of this legislative session as it coincides with the Republican National Convention, I would invite you to watch these two videos after you have had an opportunity to finish this one. The relevance of these videos to this last piece of the legislation I will review will become evident in a moment. Given that this entire legislation is related to the allocation of public revenue or taxpayer funds, it is interesting to note that it also approves that no payments or compensation be given to citizens who are on boards, commissions, authorities, councils, or other bodies for their service. In my opinion, this type of service should not be compensated. However, I also believe that politicians, senators, delegates, council members, etc., should also not receive payment for their service. More importantly, is this Virginia Birth-Related Neurological Injury Compensation Program. So this would provide reimbursement for families who file a claim indicating that their child was born with some type of birth-related neurological injury. That the government would assume responsibility for this payment is significant. However, people who have been approved for this compensation program are then required to acquire their own private health insurance to provide the coverage for actual medical and reasonable expenses related to the care of the injured child. I think we can also be clear about the cause of a birth-related neurological injury and how that directly ties in to the recruitment of students who would then learn how to become pilots for their space programs. So we have come full circle with my point. Angelia, I know her name, she asked that her name be pronounced Angela, but my name is often mispronounced, so I understand the frustration. I also have a sister-in-law who married a Williams, whose maiden name is Avant, named Angela Williams, who also grew up in Ingleside and currently lives in Ingleside. So it helps me not to get confused about who is who. A person who indicates they were raised in the Ingleside neighborhood, attended Booker T. Washington High School, whose father was a prominent bishop of an Antioch church in Norfolk, has approved legislation that ultimately may contribute to injury to the neurological functioning of infants being born into this community. It should give you something to think about and contemplate. Project 2025 is still a year away, but this was just approved yesterday.